All right, thanks for jumping on, everybody. As I had mentioned before, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to keep today's class a little shorter than the first two that we walked through. I do want to take this moment again for those of you who are on now, for those who are going to catch the replay, etc. Kind of what you can expect for the month of October. Honestly, you saw our training calendar went out. I tried to pencil in different dates, different days, different types of classes. I'm sure I'm going to start getting smaller groups, which is completely fine, completely understandable. But I want to basically, use some of those classes to address other questions. So that's why you'll see there's going to be a class on what to do with your old loops. There's going to be a class just focused on submitting your paperwork for compliance. I've also made sure to block out two separate days, 2 different times for kind of like an in-person workshop, which in that case, that's going to be used more for not teaching anything in particular, but kind of working with people one-on-one to address questions. Everyone's going to probably run into similar questions along the way, so I figured that would be a good opportunity for those who are comfortable. And if we get enough of a turnout, obviously we'll get coffee and donuts and all that good stuff and make a little good time out of it. But having said that, the purposes of today's class is mainly to walk through, again, repeating that process that I've kind of showed in the previous 2 classes, and then getting to the point of actually filling out a contract. So as I had mentioned, I and Sally have been working on getting the documents uploaded into DocuSign, all of the documents that you're going to need for your transaction. As of right now, we have all of the GSMLS, Central Jersey MLS listing paperwork in, all of the buyer paperwork in, and I think the rental tenant paperwork as well. So I'll actually talk a little bit more about that once I get into that part of DocuSign. We're still making some changes. We still have to upload a couple additional forms, change some of the naming convention a little bit. But for the most part, a lot of that paperwork's in there. So what I recommend, especially as we start getting into October, although you may not feel comfortable sending it to your client just yet, go in and play around. Obviously, you guys spend a lot of time with this paperwork, probably even more than I do. So go ahead, fill some things out, send it to yourself or a friend or anything like that, and just kind of practice that way. That's really going to be the best way to kind of get a good feel for it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to get started here. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions along the way. Drop a message in the chat box. I'll do my best to answer it on the fly, and we'll just get started. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So kind of the first point that I want to make, I know there's been, I've had some questions kind of over the last few weeks about, do I have to go into command every single time to, to basically access my paperwork that I need to send or make edits to for my client? The main answer for that, the important answer for that is you will want to go into command when you first start that transaction. The reason for that is because if you, let's say, go to DocuSign directly, put in all their information, have them send and sign their paperwork, it's not connected into command. So when that time comes that you need to submit those materials for compliance to the MCA office, you're then going to have to go back into command, recreate the contact. And unfortunately, it won't sync together as well as it would if you just go in here the first time and start the transaction that way. So having said that, that's kind of really important for everybody to know. Definitely create the contact first, start it in command first, and then go into DocuSign. Once you've created that opportunity, you can then just go into DocuSign. So if you ever need to then access other paperwork or anything like that, you can then just go directly into DocuSign. But in that case, like I said, it is important that you do create that contact, create that opportunity first. Sorry, I got a couple more people jumping in. Let me just make sure everyone's everybody. Okay. Yes. So as I was saying, it is very important. Please create your contact and your opportunity first. Once it is created, you can then just log in directly to DocuSign in order to access or send or change any additional paperwork. And just to reiterate it, it's important because when it does come time to submit for compliance, you are going to be required to have that opportunity created here in Command. Okay. So having said that, what I want to do now, I'm going to kind of go through this part quick. Again, you're going to see on some of these classes, this is the part that becomes a little repetitive, and that's just to get comfortable with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a contact, I'm going to create an opportunity, and we're going to go into DocuSign directly. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of that paperwork, and we can fill out a listing agreement just so you guys get an idea of what that looks like. Okay. Okay. So I am logged into my Command, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the red box so I can expand my menu, and I'm going to click into Contacts. So once I'm in there, obviously you see I have most of our roster in here. I'm going to add a test contact, just a dummy contact. Again, all you will need to get this started is just their name and their email. That is all you need. You can always add more information later. So for today, let me give it, let's see. Anybody got a good name? Let's go with Tom Smith. Okay. And I'm going to put his email. Let's say it's Tom Smith 123 at Gmail. Something generic. Okay. That's all you need. For right now, that is all you need to be able to create that contact. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead, scroll down, and hit create. Okay. So it will show that you created your contact. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull up that contact. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and search for Tom Smith. There he is right there. I'm going to go ahead and click on his name, and that's going to take me into his contact card. Again, from this point, you can add in any other information if you need to. But for the purposes of filling out this portion, all that is required is the name and the email. Okay. So we created our contact. Next, we need to create the opportunity. So once you create this contact and you click into the name, you'll see on the left-hand side is the contact card. And on the right-hand side is the kind of timeline of different options. So you'll see here, starts off with the timeline. Right next to that is opportunities. And again, that is all you need to click on. You're going to go ahead and click on opportunities. Once you do that, if you do have another opportunity already created for this person, it would show right here. But we're going to go ahead and create that first opportunity for him. So all I'm going to do is click on create opportunity. And by doing so, that's going to go ahead and open this page. And we're just going to fill out any of the information that has a little red asterisk next to it. That's going to be the most important. That's going to be required. So let's just work our way from the top to the bottom. Obviously, right off the bat, market center, that is obviously going to be our market center, Burnsville Basking Ridge. So that will remain. Next, we're going to select opportunity type. And that does give you 4 options. So for the purposes of today, let's go ahead and do a listing. What this will do is this will kind of just help, essentially, when it does come time for the compliance portion, helps us kind of break down to be able to see what is a listing, what are, working with buyers, landlord, tenant, etc. So it just kind of helps us group some of that together. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a listing one. Owner, that will always be your name. Again, if you're working with a team or anything like that, this may look a little different. or I shouldn't say it will look different. What you select may be a little different, but I'm reaching out separately to anybody on a team to walk through that portion. So the owner in that case will be my name. And then since we're doing this for the contact we created, Tom Smith's name will appear here. If there is a co-seller or a co-buyer or anything like that, you will have the option to search for that additional name here as well. They will be required to be entered as a separate contact. So that is important to note if you do have a husband and a wife, or two buyers or two sellers or whatever the case may be, you will need to put them in as separate contacts. That doesn't mean they need to have separate opportunities. They just need to be in there as separate contacts so their information can pull into the paperwork as well. Underneath that, we have opportunity name. Again, that is just going to be whatever opportunity name you want to do or name in order to classify it. Kind of similar to what we did with dot loop. We recommend, if you happen to know the property address, definitely put the property address. Or if you're just working with the buyers, buyer's name is good enough. So in this case, it's going to automatically pop up as Tom Smith listing. I can go ahead and keep that. Maybe I'll put today's date, which I can't believe it's the 6th, but we're going to go with it. So 10/6/21. Custom tags, not worried about that yet. Estimated close date, we don't need any of that. The last 3 that we will need to include are commission rate, opportunity phase, and opportunity stage. So commission rate, I recommend just putting in obviously that 2.5%. Some of this information can be changed later, if it ever needed to. So again, just popping that in. Opportunity phase. So this will give you 3 options: cultivate, appointment, or active. And you can honestly just select whichever one you choose. Chances are, if you're coming here to do the paperwork for them, you're past the cultivate stage, you're past the appointment stage, you're probably pretty active with them. So we're going to go ahead and select active. And last but not least, opportunity stage. So that will give you the options of either staging, showing, or negotiations. So in this case, we'll keep it as staging. This is for a listing. None of that is really going to come into play too much. Again, it just kind of helps us organize information for all of the agents in order to see kind of where people are, in their transaction, in their process. And it can always be changed. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and click create. So you'll see as soon as I do that, that pops up with that opportunity right here. Tom Smith listing, some of that information. And all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on into that opportunity. All right, and since I've been talking for about 10 minutes here, let me stop, let me pause real quick. Does anybody have any questions with anything I walked through so far? Okay, I'll take silence as a good thing. Okay, so now that we have come into here, you'll see this takes you to that opportunity page for that, again, for that particular contact. So we have up here Tom Smith and the listing. And you'll see there are a bunch of drop downs here as well. I will say before we actually get into DocuSign, which I'm about to do, super valuable, super important. As soon as it takes you to this page, you'll see that there is a details tab. And if you scroll down, there's a bunch of different information you can drop in. Feel free to populate this as much as you would like. Whatever you populate here will feed into DocuSign. So similar to how we work with dotloop, when it requires you to put in that information, you're doing the same thing here in Command. The more information you pull in here, the more it's going to populate into those areas in your paperwork. So highly recommend filling out as much of this as you can. One nice thing, if you are, for example, working with a, chances are you're putting in a listing, you're putting it in for the first time. So you wouldn't be able to necessarily always select from listings here at the top, depending on the timing. However, if you're working with a buyer, it's going to be really great because if you know the particular listing, you can actually click select from listings, pull up that property, and a lot of this information will fill in automatically for you. So again, that's a really good feature because again, it's going to save you some time. It's going to make sure that information is correct. So hopefully, as you see that, you kind of see that it's all, all kind of coming together, and you can get an idea for how everything is connected. So again, that's kind of the idea behind doing the whole DocuSign transition, is because we want to have all that information connected in all of these different places. Okay. So again, we're doing a listing today, so I'm not going to go ahead and select a listing. I'm not even going to really fill out too much more of this paperwork. I'll leave this as is just for today's example. But when you do come to this page, the only section that I am focused on teaching you guys to get up and running are the details tab, which we're in. And then now we're going to go ahead and we're going to click into documents. Okay. So once you do that, it's going to take you to a page like this. And I will be teaching a separate class just on this a little later in the month, because this is going to be the very important part where you submit all of your completed paperwork to the MCA office. So you'll see there's actually a tab here that says Submit to MC. What I will point out at the moment, because again, this is kind of how we're trying to make this transition as smooth as possible, is you'll see there is a bit of a checklist as to the documents that you are required to submit. And funny enough, since this is a listing, this is essentially that listing checklist that currently exists in .loop. So you'll see all of that required paperwork. It's almost, if not, I don't have the paper next to me, almost, if not exactly identical to what's on that checklist already. So as you look here, you'll see CIS, listing agreement, input sheet or the MLS sheet, seller's disclosure, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll actually tell you what's going to be required. Now, if there are some that are, maybe not required, or let's say you have an addendum of some sort, you can also upload those documents separately as well. But what this right here will do is it makes it a quick and easy way for, our MCA office to go down the list, make sure everything is here. Again, follow that smooth, easy checklist, and just making sure everything is organized and clear and concise. So I will, again, teach a separate class just on this part, but I'm not really too focused on that for today. So having said that, let's jump into DocuSign. Let's take a look at those contracts and fill one out. Okay. So now that we're in that opportunity, you'll see right next to that MC button, there is a button that says Start a Transaction. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And that is going to take me over into DocuSign. If it's your first time logging in during the day, it will have you obviously log in for the first time. So let me go ahead and do that. And as soon as you log in, it's going to take you directly into that room. Again, a lot of these classes are going to end up being repetition, but think of it this way. Rooms are essentially loops in .loop. So instead of going into your loop, you're going into your room. And because we did the process this way, because we went through command, created all of this, it's taking you right into where you need to be. So kind of as I had mentioned with what I reviewed with command, same kind of applies for DocuSign. Once you're in your room, I'm only really going to focus on 2, maybe 3 different areas at the moment. You'll see there are a couple tabs here. We're going to look at details, documents, and envelopes for the purposes of today's class. So having said that, let me jump over to details real quick. And again, for those of you who are very comfortable with .loop, this is very similar to how it is in .loop. Any information that you populate here, all kinds of it, you'll see listing, listing date, offer date, contract, all of that information for your buyers, for your sellers, etc. You can add all of this information in here. And even once you get to this point in DocuSign, whatever you enter here will feed into the actual paperwork, into the actual contract. etc. So just as an example, while I'm in here, let me do, let's see, let me put in a little bit more information maybe for our seller. Or in this case, we can add another seller. Let me keep it simple. Let me just edit some information. So when you're in this details tab, there is a button in the upper right-hand corner that says edit. And we're just going to click on that, and that's going to go ahead and open up all of these boxes so we can provide some more information. So let's say we want to include Tom Smith's cell phone number. We can drop that in. Let's see, what else? Listing date. Maybe we want to, let's start populating some of that since we're going to be doing a listing. Let's do 10. Let's do October 8th, let's say, or you know what, let's do Monday the 11th. Again, bear with me, I'm just selecting some dates here. I'm not really looking at doing too much. We'll put the expiration date, let's say listing amount, let's say $5.99. We don't really have an offer yet. I'm not going to fill any of that out. Closing details, we're not quite there yet. So of course, we'll just populate some of that listing information. And even in terms of, let's drop in the address too. Let's do, let's see, 1, 2, I do enough 1, 2, 3s. Let's do 1357. Let's see, 1357 Apple Way. Really making it up today. Adrian has a quick question. Are we required to fill out offer info? No, not yet. And for the purposes of today, I'm just filling out, obviously, you know, what you would fill out to kind of start the listing. Until you get an offer, you don't need to fill in any of that info. Ever. So in that case, what you'll do is obviously if you get an offer, chances are, you know, you're going to have some separate, you're going to probably end up doing a separate bit of paperwork for that. So you don't need to put that in just yet. You know, do that in .loop. Then that's completely fine. Again, whatever you guys are kind of comfortable with, you know, how you do that, you don't need to put in the offer information. It just allows you to if you need that information populated on any of the forms. You can also manually input all this information into the forms as well, but this just kind of speeds up some of that process. So let me just kind of finish filling this out. Let's do Basking Ridge 07960, and we'll select the state. New Jersey. Okay. All right, good enough. I just wanted to, again, drop in some information. So once you're done adding whatever information you need, you can hit save in the bottom right-hand corner. And it'll save that information. Okay, so next, I'm going to jump into the second tab that I want to cover, which is documents, which is originally where it opened up to. And chances are, if you're creating a brand new room, you're not going to have any documents in here yet. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to see there is a button in the upper right that says add. And we're going to go ahead and click on add. And then second from the top is the option to select DocuSign forms. So again, you can manually upload any documents that you have. If you need to scan anything in, you can certainly do that. Same if you have anything in Google Drive or Dropbox, any of those as well. But for the purposes of today, and again, to get everybody comfortable, we're just going to stick with DocuSign forms.
Sam?
Yeah.
I have a question. So where you were before, where all of our paperwork was, that paperwork then needs all to be moved over to another area? Is that what you're doing now?
Sorry, say that one more time.
So we were just looking at all of the paperwork previously for the client or for any client, all the paperwork that is required, all of that then has to be moved over to this area?
Oh, sorry. Are you referring to what we looked at in command?
I thought we were
Um,
just in DocuSign. Yeah, all of that. Are you saying that
yeah.
now individually, all these things need to be moved into?
No. What I'm about to show you in DocuSign, I'm going to actually show you the paperwork. And what's nice about Command and DocuSign is it'll feed in that paperwork. So this screen here in Command, it'll actually allow you to just select the paperwork for that, again, for whatever it is that you're working on. So since we're currently in this room in DocuSign, that paperwork will feed right into Command when it's time for you to submit it. So you won't have to recreate or move anything or anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we are in documents. So like I was saying, we're going to go ahead. We're going to click on DocuSign Forms. And this is where you're going to come to actually select the paperwork that you need. Most important with this is kind of what I had mentioned early at the beginning of the call. This is the process that Sally and I are still finishing up. Most, if not all of the paperwork for some of these are already in here. But I will say, just be patient with us. We know there are some forms that will need to be updated. We may change some of the naming conventions. Some of this was uploaded prior to me being here. So we're in the process of doing that now. What I will say is you're welcome to use it. You're welcome to practice with it. And you can always change the names yourself before you send it to your client if for whatever reason you're not comfortable with sharing the name that it currently is. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. But first, let me just explain what you're seeing here. So we clicked into documents, we clicked in to add DocuSign forms, and it's going to go ahead and pull up something that looks like this. There are two sections on the left-hand side. There are groups and there are libraries. So the thing with DocuSign, the nice feature about DocuSign is that it's connected to all of these different libraries. So as a New Jersey agent, we have access to all of these different libraries. If you're not seeing those, or if you're not able to access them, you will need to add your NERDS ID number. Reach out to me and I can show you how. It's a quick and simple little process. But you'll see that what that'll do is that will pull up libraries of specific forms for, again, whatever the MLS or board in that case that you're, whatever MLS you need the appropriate paperwork for. So in this case, if I click into Garden State, you'll see that these are all of the forms that, again, you guys are already using in different capacities. So if you ever need to access anything that is not in our separate, what are called groups, you'll be able to click into these libraries and find additional forms as well. The nice thing about it is when those forms are updated, they are updated automatically in here. So that way you never have to question if you're using an old form or anything like that. You're always going to have the most up-to-date form as provided by the MLS. So again, that's going to be a really great feature with that. Within this library, there is one specific library, again, that was created just for our market center, and it's called KW825. So that is, again, KW and our market center number. This is the part that I will say, most, if not all of the paperwork that is in here are forms specific to our office. So things like checklists, our referral form, offer questionnaires, RESPA, all that stuff is going to exist and live in this library. The way that it works is we, as a leadership team, are not able to manually upload those forms ourselves. We do have to submit them through a server for them to then upload into this section. So that's, I wanted to kind of level set with everybody. That's why it may take a little bit of time. Unfortunately, it's not on us. It is on the server to update the naming convention for some of these forms and to change, if there's some little tweaks that need to be made to some of the forms in here. Having said that, though, again, you can almost picture this KW825 as more of like a version now, similar to what we have in .loop. You can almost picture that KW825 library as that, the main spot where all of those forms live. having explained the library section, what you guys are mainly going to use are going to be these individual groups. And so you'll see here we have a full list of groups. You can, these are essentially what we already have created in .loop. So when you go to create a new loop, you'll see that you would select whether it's buyer documents or GSMLS listing documents, tenant docs, referral docs, whatever the case may be, whatever you need is going to be filled in here. So what I've been working on is getting all of these different documents that you will need to live in one of these groups. And so for the purposes of today, since we're working on a listing, let's say it's a GSMLS listing. So if I go ahead and click on that, it's going to pull up all of the forms. And you'll see, similar to that checklist, and actually, Adrienne, this is a great point, similar to that checklist that I had pulled up in Command that shows all the documents that need to be submitted, you'll actually see here that when you pull up these groups, it'll show you those forms that are going to be required. And that's when Command and DocuSign kind of work together. So it knows which forms you're going to have to submit. So that way, when it does come time to do that, you'll just click a button and it'll pull the form in automatically. So you won't have to do any kind of back and forth or anything like that. So what's great about this, you'll see here required, these are all going to be ones that are required, but then we've also included, similar to .loop, any of those additional forms that you may possibly need. So whether it is an addendum of some sort, you know, whether it's for a well or a septic or whatever the case may be, we try to organize these exactly as they were in .loop. So you're not running around chasing, looking for certain documents. So part of my goal here, I finished them for GSMLS. I have finished them for the buyer docs, Central Jersey, etc. I'm just going to be finishing up some of these other ones. So of course, Hudson County and things like that. But for the purposes of today, we're going to stick with the GSMLS listing docs. So what you can do, and this is again completely up to you, you can either individually check off the forms that you want to add to your room, or in this case, since we did create these groups in that way, you can always check them all off if you would prefer. That way, all of those docs are in your room. You won't have to really come back here to add in anymore. So we can go ahead and do that since we're working on a listing. I'm going to check off this first box, which will pull in all of the forms. And then I'm just going to hit add selected. So once you do that, you're going to see that it's going to start pulling in and populating some of these forms. Once you work with them, they will actually start to kind of fill out. You'll actually see an example of what the form looks like. It won't do that automatically, but give it a little bit of time and it will. But basically, when you get to this point, you then, again, have everything that you need in this document room. Jumping ahead just a little, but when it does come time that you need to send off that paperwork, you know, to your client, I will show you how to do that here momentarily, but you don't need to send all of this. You'll see that you can actually just check off the ones that you need to send for signature or to be filled out or anything like that. So they won't be able to view this. You'll currently only be able to view this part. Okay. Any questions thus far? Next, I'm just going to jump into, we'll take a look at a listing agreement. We'll quickly kind of fill it out, and I'll show you how you would send that off. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's go ahead and click on, let's do, oh, I'm sorry. I do want to call attention to just one more thing while we're in here. As I had mentioned, some of the naming conventions are going to change slightly. This is kind of a perfect example. So I would think of it this way. The forms that we're pulling in that are specific to that MLS, so since this happens to be for a Garden State MLS, you'll see that some forms are going to start with GSMLS change form or GSMLS coming soon listing. Those are names that are provided by the MLS. So unfortunately, we don't have the option to change the naming of those files. So right off the bat, you'll see, looks like, I think all of the, I think they're in alphabetical order. I'm looking at it correctly. So it's going to start with whatever the alphabetical order is. So in this case, all of those GSMLS forms are going to populate right here at the top. They should be pretty clear naming wise, and you really shouldn't, have to change those names for any reason. However, and this is the part that we're still working on, you will see that we do have, again, our office specific forms in here as well, those KW 825 forms. So those are in here and they are correct and applicable for this Garden State GSMLS listing room. However, some forms are kind of across the board, can be used for obviously different MLSs and things like that. This is actually kind of a perfect example. I'm just looking at this one right here. KW 825 Central Jersey utility list. Funny enough, that's the same one for across the board. This was before my time. I don't know why it was named Central Jersey, but those are going to be some of the corrections that you're going to see moving forward. It's not going to really impact you guys in any way. It'll just kind of clarify some of these market center specific forms. So again, same thing you're going to see, even though this is a GSMLS folder, Central Jersey, or in this case, HCMLS. Again, I'm not sure what happened with that initial upload, but I'm in the process of going back and changing the names for those forms. Just no need to be too tripped up, too tripped up for that. So again, I just want to call attention to that. You'll see that's going to be changing here over the coming days and over the next couple of weeks. I do have a couple of forms I do have to go through. Okay, Adrienne. So all of these forms load and we have to go through them. So Adrienne, it's exactly the same as in dot-loop. So you would just check off in that case whatever forms that you used that you hold on, let me kind of structure it this way. So when you create a new loop in dot-loop, it automatically is going to pull in all the forms. That's exactly what I created here. The only thing here is the way that it works is you can either choose to select just the forms that you're going to need from that previous. Sorry, let me just pull it up this way. This might be a little easier. So when I went into that GSMLS group, I just went ahead and checked off all the forms. I already have all of the forms in the room, so it's not letting me select any at the moment. They're all, as you'll see, in use. But in that case, you can either just select the ones that are going to be required. So you don't need to select any of these additional forms. That's just similar to how we had it in dot-loop, where we like to group anything that you could need to include in one spot should you need. But in this case, we'll have it highlighted where you'll see that you just have to check off the forms that are required. That'll just give you that basic information. Yeah, so no need to worry about that. Again, this is just a broad example. And it's going to be different for everybody. Some people prefer to just have the forms they need. Some like to have everything available all in one click instead of having to click around if they should need another form. So that just boils down to preference. But what is nice is we will just tell you, we will highlight the forms that are required. So really, those are the only ones that you're going to have to worry about. So you can just check those off. Those will go right into your room and you'll only see the ones that are going to be required. Okay, so last but not least, because unfortunately I have another class I'm teaching at 11, so I do want to make sure I get through this. I went ahead and clicked on the GSMLS Listing Commission Agreement. So again, what's nice about that, this is a form that comes directly from Garden State. And as you'll see, that information that we populated into that details tab when we first got into DocuSign, that information is automatically pulling right into this form. So again, I know that's been sometimes a bit of a complaint with dot-loop, is some areas aren't matching or anything like that. Because these forms in DocuSign are coming directly from the MLSs, they are meant to be formatted correctly. And so all of that information should populate, especially things as simple as the office information, your client's information, anything like that. So that's what makes this part really easy. There's really not too much, but you will have the option to manually type in anything else. You can also make any changes to any of the information that's already there if something isn't correct. That will actually update in the details section as well. But really, for the most part, funny enough, today is a contract class. I'm not going to obviously walk through how to fill out the contract. Again, I'm going to leave that up for Sally. But all of the information that you would normally put in as you're doing now in Dotloop, going to be the same way in here. So you'll see all of these boxes are pre-filled out. Anything that you need to add, any check boxes, etc. So I know the $1 million question for everybody is, okay, I need to get the signature on here. So when you first click on the document and go through it like we are now, there's not going to be any boxes or anything for signatures. What you will do in order to get those signatures is you're going to fill out that document first, make sure everything is good to go as per your liking, and you can go ahead and hit save and close. What you'll do is once you have everything filled out exactly as it should be, you need to send everything off for signature. Here's all you're going to have to do. I'm going to use that listing agreement as the example. So as I had mentioned before, you can check off all, or whoops, I clicked into that one. Sorry. You can check off all of them. You can check off select documents, etc. So because we just filled out the listing agreement, I'm going to go ahead and check that one off. When you do that, it's going to pull up a couple options right here at the top. It'll give you the option to make a copy if you need to move. So just as an example, if you need to move it to any other location, I will cover that a little later. That's kind of 2.0. Not too worried about that yet. Sorry, move. You can email it directly to someone. If you do that, it will not include the signature. So just important to know that. Right here is the one that I want you to focus on, and that's going to be the most important thing as you're getting used to DocuSign. The fourth in, create envelope. That is how you are essentially going to send that document off to be signed. So I will come back to that one just to also mention, you'll see there are options to archive, unarchive, or delete that document as well. But since we're going to send this off for signature, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on, I've checked off that document. I'm going to go ahead and click create envelope. So, think of it this way. Perfect example, keep it as simple as we can. All of your documents exist within a room. I'm in our little prospecting room at the moment. Let's say all of my documents are in here. Let's say I literally physically have them mapped out on the desk in front of me. I filled everything out. Great. Everything is good to go. I'm ready to package it up and send it off to my client to be signed. Well, back in the old days, before there was internet and all that stuff, chances are you had to write them. And if you couldn't deliver it to their house, maybe you put it in the mail and you mailed it to them. That's essentially what this envelope is. You're taking all of these documents, everything that needs to be signed, you're putting it in an envelope, you're sealing it. So again, that's kind of where the security feature of DocuSign comes into play. You're actually sealing that envelope. So that way the person that's receiving it is the only one that's going to have access to sign, to look at it, etc. So what we're doing here is we're putting all those documents into an envelope and we're sending it off. Once you get here, you'll see we're just going to work our way from top to bottom. We have envelope name. So this is always going to revert to please DocuSign. You can change it if you'd like and keep it as is. This is just what your client is going to see when they receive that envelope. So of course, please DocuSign. You can always do the listing address or the client name or anything like that. So in this case, I know I forget what listing name I put. Let's say, I think it was 1357 Apple Way, whatever it was. Something like that. Next, depending on what documents you checked off, they will all appear here. So because I only checked off one document, it's just right here. If you have multiple documents, again, it will populate. It'll show all of them. If you, for whatever reason, need to add another document, there will be a box that looks like this as well. And by clicking on Room Docs, it will allow you to pull in any other forms from your room. So let's say we only had this one. Let's say we forgot whatever other forms. We can just click and add those in as well. Again, not too worried about that just yet. Let's just focus on this one for the moment. Third, we're going to go ahead and add the recipient who needs to either receive or sign that, that paperwork. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add Recipient. And that's going to give you a couple, three options: pre-tagged roles, room participants, or email address. Email address is what you would do if you're just sending it off to someone just to look at. It's not going to populate their signatures. For now, I would say do not use that one just yet. Wait a little bit till you get comfortable with the other features first. Same with room participants. Those are certain select people that have access to the room. So, you know, as an example, the MCA office, the broker, things like that. Those are going to be some of those room participants, similar to what you already have in Donnelly. Pre-tagged roles, however, is what you are going to select. And when you click on that, it's going to pull up a screen that looks like this. It'll let you actually add in those pre-tagged roles. So if you're doing everything we did, and in this case, since we only have one seller, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check off seller one. It's going to show the documents that they need to sign. And you're going to go ahead and select that recipient. So it's going to give you a few options. But again, the nice thing is if you did everything that we just did, you'll be able to add in your, or sorry, I should say your client's information is going to appear right there. So in this case, that was that Tom Smith that we made up. If you have another seller, again, same thing, you would check them off and you would select their name. What that does is each of those individuals will receive their own envelope for them to sign. By doing it this way with these pre-tagged roles, it's going to automatically go through those documents and it's going to select any spot that that individual needs to sign. So in this case, we really only have Tom Smith as seller one, and listing agent, again, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and select myself again, that's I'm working with this client. So I'll go ahead and populate that part as well. So again, it will have those pre-tagged roles. If it is if you're working with a buyer instead of seller, obviously it's going to say buyer. If you're working with a tenant, it's going to say tenant, etc. So it'll automatically change based on what type of room you're working in. So I'm going to go ahead and select those, and I'm going to click Add Selected. So not much you're going to have to do. It's just going to show who they are if they need to sign. Again, this is kind of where you give them a different option. If you add someone and you want to make sure that maybe they just receive a copy or they just need to view it, you can select what options they have. But for the purposes of today, again, we're going to send this off for a signature. So Adrienne, at what point do we add the broker to sign? So great question. So in that case, if you're filling this out for a brand new listing, obviously you're going to want to fill this out first. Have the broker signature. You can actually add the broker signature while you're doing this. So just as you see a pre-tagged role, listing broker right here. Actually, that is a very good point. I need to make sure I go into our settings to. I need to make sure that we add Sally to that. So you'll be able to just select Sally, and same thing, any area that Sally needs to sign, that will pull in automatically as well. I apologize for that. I'm glad I came across that. I'm going to update that today. Yes, you can check everyone off at the same time. Yep. Yep. And it'll go to all those parties separately. So those individual parties will sign their portion on their own. And to that point, if for whatever reason you need to hold off on sending it to someone, you can always just come back in just like we're doing and have that other person or that other individual sign a form that's already been signed by the other party. So it'll automatically update once it gets those signatures from those individuals.
Sam,
Yeah,
excuse me, I have a question.
yeah.
How do we know, like normally we get an email when the customer signs every document. How do we know when the customer has signed the documents?
Same thing. DocuSign will send you an email as soon as they sign it, saying that the documents have been signed.
Are
So
you
it works
sure?
the same way.
Only because another agent had mentioned to me that they found that that was a big problem because they weren't notified when the client signed.
So in that case, what you'll do, and that's something I can cover on the next class, you just have to go into your settings in DocuSign and you can select what type of correspondence you want to receive. So like I have it set that anytime someone signs or I send something off, I get an email notification.
Okay.
So it just depends. Yeah, that's just set up in the settings of DocuSign. Yep. Okay, and then last but not least, you can provide a message to your recipients down here. For the purposes of time, I'm not going to fill any of that out. I'm going to just hit next up in the upper right hand corner. And what this will do, you're going to see it's going to take us to that document. And if you scroll down, it's going to automatically put in those sections where you or your client or the broker, or whatever the case may be, needs to sign. So all the work is pretty much done for you. You should be able to get to this point, although there is other stuff kind of on the left-hand side. You'll see there's kind of a display option on the right-hand side. All you really need to do is just make sure you scroll down and you see these boxes. You can actually toggle the view in the upper left-hand corner to show any other areas that maybe that particular person needs to fill out. So in the purposes of this, the only things that need to be filled out, obviously, are the signatures and the date. So in this case, the owner would sign there, and of course, the listing agent would sign there. It's going to populate automatically. It should do that for all of these forms. This is, again, just one example. Same thing, CIS, I'm trying to, whatever other, seller's disclosure, etc., should automatically fill in with those placeholders for the signature. Again, because they're coming straight from the MLS. So they're all formatted accordingly already. So if everything looks good, and again, if you have multiple documents, it'll show the full list of multiple documents. It'll show all the areas that that person needs to sign. You can actually see, before you hit send, there's an option to view recipient preview. And that's, again, just a great feature because you'll see what it's going to look like for your client. So in this case, Tom Smith, this is what it would look like for him. He'll just click to sign, electronically sign, and he'll hit finish. And it's pretty much as simple as that. Same concept as .loop. So if everything is good to go, you'll just go to the upper right-hand corner and hit send. Now, I did include a dummy email in that case for the client, so it will not go to that individual because I did put a test email. But if I refresh my own email, because I put myself as a listing agent, again, just as this example, if I click in, I received an email like this. Your client would receive something similar. And in this case, it just says you have a document to review and sign. You click it, you'll jump in, you'll sign it, you'll hit finish. Done. Just the same way that .loop works. Okay. Any questions? Again, unfortunately, I do have to jump off. I have another class that I have to teach at 11. But any initial questions for today? I guess let me stop my screen for a second so I can see everybody. Okay, well, if you do have any questions, again, please shoot me an email, call, text, whatever works. Happy and here to help. We're gonna have a lot more classes. Again, you're gonna see this will kind of become repetitive. there are little things that we're still making updates to. So again, just ask for a little bit of patience there. If anything does look strange or you'd like anything changed, again, send me a message because we're going to try and incorporate that feedback as we clean this up a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for hopping on, everybody. Again, I got to run to my next class. I will see you on the next class. I already forget when I scheduled it, but I will see you then. And for those catching the recording, again, any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.